Hello and welcome to another review for TechPowerUp. This week we'll be reviewing Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden, a game which was developed by the Beard Ladies Consulting and published by Funcom. Mutant Year Zero is probably one of the best turn-based strategies to grace the PC screen in years, honestly. It's a nice mixture between free roam, stealth and turn-based combat, which adds a much needed respite between sort of the combat skirmishes, and it provides a much more palatable way to gain resources in a more sort of interactive way. When most games, sort of like in Heroes of Magic and XCOM, you sort of passively gain resources. In this, it's very much a player interactive sort of thing, of picking up scrap and rare artifacts and weapon materials and whatnot. So it just feels a little bit nicer. It does borrow a lot and feel quite closely to XCOM in terms of sort of character outfitting, combat and skills. But I can confidently say that the rest of it is original enough to hopefully have games comparing themselves to this in future instead of everyone jumping on XCOM. Its storyline is quite unique. The characters are very well sort of rounded, very brilliantly written, voiced, dialogue. The whole works characters are great, and there's sort of a nice subtle mix of them as well. And the gameplay is just... The only way I can describe the gameplay is it is just one of the most well-rounded and challenging experiences to not make it frustrating, sort of in terms of difficulty, but also not making it sort of face roll in nature. The easiest way I can describe the difficulty is sort of similar to Knights of the Republic, if anybody sort of remembers the sort of the ebb and the flow of that game's difficulty. Honestly, I loved it so much. I can very much see myself continuing to play this in my free time because it was just such a well-built, well-rounded game, and it just hit me in the right places. In terms of negatives, I'm really scraping the barrel. Yes, the level up system is quite basic, but similar to XCOM's. Not every turn-based strategy game needs sort of the Heroes of Might and Magic levels of complexity, especially when it comes to the level up system. The most jarring aspect of the game is probably the combat camera, as it takes some seriously weird angles sometimes and doesn't actually show you anything on occasion. It's just a little bit buggy. To say that this is the game's biggest flaw is probably a testament to how good the rest of it is. My other frustrations came from the stealth mechanic. Enemies have this sort of red circular field of vision around them when you're sort of sneaking around, which sort of inexplicably expands when you get near to it, and it expands by a few meters. And I just thought, what's the point in that happening? Why not either make it that large by default or not having them expand at all? It just seemed a little bit pointless, bizarre, and just sort of artificially added some complexity where none was needed, if you know what I mean. My only other qualm was that the game was capped at 62 FPS in full screen mode, so overall not a huge deal, and the performance in terms of computer processing power was pretty bang on point. More importantly, the game's characters and storyline are all fantastic. One-liners didn't get excessively boring. They sort of became endearing, close to sort of Skyrim's Hour in the Knee sort of things. They all felt extremely well written, had some great roles, defined abilities. The mixture between storyline and gameplay was just like, it struck a perfect balance. And in a similar vein, the sort of free roam sections and the battle sections, also perfect balance between those two bits of core gameplay, which just, it sort of made the game not feel repetitive and gave the player a little bit of freedom sort of where it was necessary. The maps in each area are huge and varied. The graphics are sort of very well done, and it gives you free reign on however you want to stage your battle. So battles can take place anywhere on the map depending on where the enemies are sort of spawning and patrolling and how you engage them, which was really nice because there's some massive maps with a lot of effort that's gone into creating them, and it's nice to be able to battle them in that way as well, and you can just sort of run around in mid-battle and push the enemy towards you. So yeah, it's nice in battle as well as just general sort of exploration in order to find scrap and weapon parts. Apart from the red circle field of vision, I like the stealth addition and how it was implemented to make the game go from sort of immensely hard to subtly challenging, because the whole point of stealth is to pick off a few enemies in silence and then sort of quell the overall force so that it makes it a little bit easier to approach. And the enemies are suitably variable to push you to sort of expand your own character specialization so that you're not just going in there all guns blazing with a troop of people just with shotguns and health, basically. Leveling up is quite simple. It's just sort of a 2-line tree for each character with sort of passives, and a single line tree with just sort of pure paths for health, that sort of thing, and extra grenade throws and inventory slots. But the 2-line tree has a mixture of passive and actives, also known as mutations. All weapons serve a purpose as well in terms of customization. They could all have sort of different stats and abilities. They can all be sort of modded in the same way as each other, so they all have different scopes and different chambers. I love the fact that the equipment alters the appearance of your characters. So if you equip your character with a shotgun and a top hat and a bright yellow set of armor, your character will look like that in game. Ducks with a top hat and sniper rifle was just the peak performance. It's just such a solid and well-rounded game. It deserves to be in everybody's Steam library. I was honestly very impressed at the polish and care taken to make sure every single system in the game was absolutely hammered down and just absolutely nailed to the point where you can't complain about anything. Yes, they could have chased half a dozen more systems and thrown sort of the kitchen sink and the ladder and everything in there, but it wouldn't have improved the experience beyond what it already is. So honestly, this is definitely a game I would recommend at the very least to myself, and I can see myself playing it a hell of a lot more over the next few weeks. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this review. We will indeed have another review next week. The weeks following that, not entirely sure, because Christmas is coming and game developers surprisingly don't release too much on a schedule around that time. But yeah, hope to see you guys next week.